Senator Chris Van Hollen just gave Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth a reality check on the Iran war. He said 18 American heroes have been killed, 1 is missing, hundreds have been injured, and thousands of civilians have died. He said the Strait of Hormuz is closed and gas prices have spiked above $4 a gallon. He asked how the administration defines winning. Hegseth said ensuring Iran never has a nuclear weapon.
You asked me what the overarching objective is, and I would say ensuring Iran never has a nuclear weapon. That's been clear from the president from day one.
Van Hollen pointed out that Hegseth said the bombing campaign obliterated Iran's ability to create nuclear weapons, but that is clearly not the case. He noted that the DNI testified that Iran did not intend to restart its nuclear program. He said the president committed that Iran would not develop a nuclear weapon. He said they need to enforce that. He yielded. Let's watch.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Secretary Rollins, the Beltsville Agricultural Research Center in Maryland is one of the crown jewels of agricultural research in the United States. And my question is simple. Can we find some time to get together in the coming weeks to discuss the situation there?
Absolutely, yes.
Thank you, Madam Secretary.
Yes.
Let me turn to the Iran war. We recently lost 3 American heroes. That brings the death toll for American soldiers to 18. 1 is still missing. Hundreds have been injured. That's on top of the civilian death toll throughout the region that now stands at several thousand, including the over 150 people killed in the bombing of an elementary school in Minab in Iran. Meanwhile, the Strait of Hormuz is closed. Gas prices today in the United States again spiked above $4 a gallon. And that will also continue to push up costs for groceries and other things that families buy. Secretary Hegseth, you said in your opening statement the best way to ensure peace is to prepare for war, and I agree with you about deterrence. I would also submit that the best way to ensure peace is not to start wars, because wars are a lot easier to start than they are to end. General Kane, I heard your testimony saying Iran will continue to be a challenge. And I think it's pretty clear that that is, in fact, the case. And, General, in order for you to develop a military strategy to accomplish a particular objective, you obviously need to know what those objectives are, right?
Yes, sir. It all starts with what is the political objective, and from that we derive military objectives that support whatever that end state.
And as you say, that is a political objective.
Yes, sir.
So, Mr. Secretary, you've talked a lot about winning. You've talked about winning in your testimony today. You've talked about winning throughout the Iran war, and we all like winning. But I think the American people deserve a definition of what it means to win in Iran, because this war has dragged out for a lot longer than certainly the President of the United States indicated. Indeed, the President said on March 24th, and I'm quoting, "We've won this war. This war has been won." Do you know what the President meant by that back in March?
Well, Senator, I would just note that militarily, I mean, Iran has been completely overmatched and crushed from the beginning, militarily. Their capabilities are nowhere near ours. I would take issue with your characterization that we started this war. Iran started this war 47 years ago, and they've killed thousands of Americans, including our brothers on the battlefield in Iraq. Iran has been targeting us for a long time.
Mr. Secretary,
we didn't start. They did.
Let me just ask you this, since you said that what the President meant by his statement on March 24th, I think that we had sort of defeated Iran militarily. But that is not the entire objective of this war. I don't think there was ever a question about whether the United States, with its superior military, could destroy a lot of Iranian assets, military assets, or other assets. That was never a question. But when most people think of winning the war, they think that that means the war is going to come to an end because we've won. And the president said back in March that we'd won. So I guess my question to you is, how are we going to define winning? I hear back in March, you said about the Iranians, and I quote, whether they will have a ceremony in Tehran Square and surrender, that's up to them. So my question, Mr. Secretary, reopening the Strait of Hormuz is necessary in order for us to win, right? That's just a simple yes or no question.
You asked me what the overarching objective is, and I would say ensuring Iran never has a nuclear weapon. That's been clear from the president from day one. That's why Midnight Hammer was undertaken, to obliterate their nuclear sites. That's why we're watching their nuclear sites. That's why that was a part of negotiations, ensuring that the next generation of Americans don't have to deal with an Iran that wields a nuclear weapon.
Since that's what you're leading with, Mr. Secretary, let me just say this. You said after Midnight Hammer, and I'm quoting, our bombing campaign obliterated Iran's ability to create nuclear weapons, unquote. Clearly, that is not the case based on your testimony today. It's also a fact that the DNI, Tulsi Gabbard, testified in front of the Intelligence Committee that it was our assessment that Iran did not intend to restart its nuclear program. The President of the United States, just about a week ago, said Iran has committed not to develop a nuclear weapon, which of course is a commitment they've made for many years. We need to enforce that. That's what we are doing under the JCPOA. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Senator Chris Van Hollen just delivered a masterclass in how to hold the Secretary of Defense accountable for the administration's shifting objectives and its failure to define what winning means. He did not come with a speech. He came with questions. He came with the facts of the death toll. He came with the facts of the closed strait and rising gas prices, and he left no doubt about the answer. The exchange between Van Hollen and Hegseth was not just a routine hearing. It was a confrontation about the fundamental question of whether the administration has a strategy for victory or is simply muddling through. It was about whether the American people can trust their leaders to tell them the truth about a war that is costing billions of dollars, disrupting the global economy, and putting American lives at risk. Van Hollen began by acknowledging the human cost. He said 18 American heroes have been killed, 1 is missing, hundreds have been injured, and thousands of civilians have died. He noted the bombing of an elementary school in Minab that killed over 150 people. He said the Strait of Hormuz is closed and gas prices have spiked above $4 a gallon. He said the war is costing American families at the pump and at the grocery store. The human cost is staggering. 18 American service members have given their lives. Hundreds have been wounded. Thousands of civilians have died. The war is not just a strategic failure, it is a humanitarian disaster. The American people are paying the price in higher gas prices, higher food prices, and higher everything. They are paying the price in the lives of their sons and daughters. Van Hollen then asked General Caney about military strategy. He asked if military objectives must be derived from political objectives. Caney said yes. That is a basic principle of war. Military objectives serve political objectives. You cannot have a military strategy without a political strategy. You cannot have a military victory without a political victory. The administration has not defined its political objectives. It has not defined what winning means. It has not defined how the war will end. That is a fundamental failure of leadership. Van Hollen then turned to Hegseth. He said Hegseth has talked a lot about winning. He asked the American people deserve a definition of what it means to win in Iran. He noted that the president said on March 24th, "We've won this war." He asked Hegseth what the president meant by that. Hegseth said Iran has been completely overmatched and crushed. He said Iran started the war 47 years ago. Van Hollen said that is not what he asked. He asked what the president meant by his statement. The president declared victory in March, but the war is not over. The strait is still closed. Gas prices are still high. American service members are still dying. The president's declaration of victory was premature. It was false. It was misleading. The American people deserve to know why the president said the war was won when it clearly was not. Van Hollen then asked if reopening the Strait of Hormuz is necessary for victory. Hegseth said the overarching objective is ensuring Iran never has a nuclear weapon. Van Hollen pointed out that Hegseth said the bombing campaign obliterated Iran's ability to create nuclear weapons. He said that is clearly not the case based on his testimony. He noted that the DNI testified that Iran did not intend to restart its nuclear program. He said the president committed that Iran would not develop a nuclear weapon. He said they need to enforce that. The contradiction is clear. Hegseth said the bombing campaign obliterated Iran's ability to create nuclear weapons, but his own testimony shows that Iran still has nuclear ambitions. The DNI testified that Iran did not intend to restart its nuclear program. The president committed that Iran would not develop a nuclear weapon. The administration is sending mixed messages. It is not being honest about the threat. It is not being honest about the objectives. Van Hollen's argument is devastating. He did not need to prove that the war is a failure. He only needed to show that the administration cannot define victory. He showed that the president declared victory in March. He showed that the war is still ongoing. He showed that the administration's objectives are shifting. He showed that the administration cannot say what winning means. He showed that the administration is not being honest about the war. The American people are paying the price. They are paying with their lives. They are paying with their money. They are paying with their trust. The administration is not being honest. It is not being transparent. It is not being accountable. The larger issue here is not just about the Iran war. It is about the credibility of the administration. It is about whether the American people can trust their leaders to tell them the truth about the cost of war. Van Hollen argued that they cannot. He argued that the administration is not being honest about its objectives. He argued that the administration is not being honest about the war. He argued that the administration is not being honest about the costs. He was right. The hearing ended without Hegseth offering a meaningful response. He sat there. He listened. He deflected. He said Iran has been completely overmatched. He said Iran started the war 47 years ago. He said the overarching objective is ensuring Iran never has a nuclear weapon. He did not answer the question. He did not define winning. He did not explain the president's declaration of victory. He did not explain why the war is still ongoing. He said Iran has been completely overmatched. That is not an answer. That is an evasion. It is the kind of answer that a politician gives when he does not want to admit the truth. It is the kind of answer that a politician gives when he hopes the committee will move on to the next question. Van Hollen did not move on. He stayed. He pressed. He asked the questions. He did not let Hegseth off the hook. Senator Van Hollen asked Secretary Hegseth to define winning in Iran. Hegseth said ensuring Iran never has a nuclear weapon. Van Hollen pointed out that Hegseth said the bombing campaign obliterated Iran's ability to create nuclear weapons, but that is not the case. He said the DNI testified that Iran did not intend to restart its nuclear program. He said the president committed that Iran would not develop a nuclear weapon. He said they need to enforce that. The American people deserve better.